Somewhere over occupied Luhansk region in July 2026, a battery-powered quadcopter is skimming the treetops toward a vehicle that was never supposed to be reachable by anything of its size. The machine waiting at the end of that route is an S-300V launcher, a tracked giant built to swat ballistic missiles out of the stratosphere at ranges past 75 kilometers. 5 separate layers of Russian defense sit between the drone and that launcher. The operator has maybe 8 minutes of battery to get through all of them. Nothing about the machine says it belongs here. It is not a fixed-wing deep-strike drone with a piston engine and a 50-kilogram warhead, flying itself to coordinates 800 kilometers away. It is a frontline multirotor, 4 brushless motors on props about 10 inches across, a lithium pack that dumps its charge in a few violent minutes, a warhead in the 1 to 3 kilogram class, and a man watching a live video feed and steering it by hand all the way to the final frame. Range measured in tens of kilometers, not hundreds. The cheapest, shortest-legged, most disposable weapon in the entire Ukrainian arsenal. And it is going after one of the most expensive vehicles Russia fields anywhere on this front. The route runs low, not because low is elegant, but because low is the only altitude where this thing survives. Climb to 200 meters and every radar in the sector paints it. Sit at treetop and the drone lives inside the ground clutter, a mess of reflections off branches, roofs, power lines, and dirt that hides a small moving object the way surf hides a swimmer. So the quadcopter threads the seam between a tree line and a farm track, close enough to the ground that its own shadow keeps pace with it on the grass. Ahead, in a rear area position that Russian planners chose precisely because it was far enough back to be safe, sits the reason for the flight. It is not an S-400, and it is not one of the S-300V batteries that ring Russian cities on wheeled trailers. The V is a separate lineage entirely, built by the Anti-Design Bureau for the Ground Forces, riding on tracks so it can move cross-country with armored formations. Its export descendant is the Anti-2500, and NATO knows the family as SA-23, Gladiator and Giant. It was engineered to go after more than aircraft and cruise missiles. Its real job was ballistic missiles, warheads arcing down out of the upper atmosphere at kilometers per second. To catch them, it carries a radar for every slice of sky, a surveillance set that sweeps the whole sector, a dedicated high-altitude sector radar built specifically to grab ballistic tracks, and a fire control radar that locks and guides. Feeding off them are the heavy 9M82 and 9M83 family missiles, credited with reaching aircraft out past 75 kilometers, and in the taller variants, well past 100. And every one of those radars has nothing to say about something puttering along at 15 meters, 4 kilometers out, under its own antenna mast. A radar is built for a target set, and Russian commanders understand that perfectly. The filters that let a Mach 5 re-entry vehicle stand out against noise are the same filters that throw away a slow, tiny, low return. The S-300V's sensors are not blind by accident. They are blind by design because seeing a quadcopter was never in the specification. The system was never meant to defend itself at zero range. That job belongs to somebody else entirely. Somebody else is 5 layers of men and machines strung out across the ground the drone is crossing right now. Russian doctrine around a high-value asset like this is defense in depth, and on paper it is genuinely formidable. The outermost layer is radio reconnaissance and electronic warfare, posts that listen across the frequency ranges FPV drones live in, find the control link, and drown it. Behind that, forward radar and visual pickets, crews whose entire job is to spot inbound quadcopters and call them out. Behind that, mobile fire teams, pickups with heavy machine guns, Cord and DSHKM-type weapons, or a towed Zu-23-2 twin cannon, waiting to put a wall of metal into the drone's path. And increasingly a 4th and 5th layer, interceptor drones, small fast quadcopters flown by dedicated crews to physically ram or net an incoming FPV before it arrives. 5 overlapping tripwires, each one independently capable of ending this flight. That is the wall the operator is flying at. The first layer is already reaching for the drone. Electronic warfare does not announce itself. There is no alarm, no siren, no visible enemy. What there is on a monitor in a dugout some kilometers behind the Ukrainian line is a slow degradation, the picture beginning to break into blocks along one edge, the control inputs arriving a heartbeat late. A ground jammer working a sector does not fire a single beam at a single drone. It blankets. It pours broadband noise across a wide slice of sky, covering the frequencies analog video links have historically used, and it keeps pouring, waiting for something to fall out of the air. The quadcopter's answer is not armor and not speed. It is the link itself. Modern strike quads do not sit still on one channel. Control and video hop across many frequencies inside an encrypted band, dozens to more than 100 times a second. So that a jammer locking onto a channel is always locking onto a place the link has already left. The result on the screen is not a clean cut. It is a stutter, a frame freezing, then catching up, then freezing again, the picture surviving in fragments while the jammer chases something that is never where it just was. The operator does not climb to get a better signal. Climbing is what the jamming crew wants because altitude is what puts the drone back on somebody's radar and in somebody's binoculars. He goes lower instead, down into the tree line where terrain itself becomes a shield. Every meter of earth and timber between the jammer's antenna and the drone eats into that noise, and a transmitter on a truck cannot bend it around a hill. 2 kilometers of low, ugly, hedge-hugging flight later, the picture steadies. Now the second screen. Somewhere out ahead are observation posts whose whole purpose is to hear this coming, because a quadcopter at low altitude is not silent. 4 motors spinning 10-inch props make a specific, unmistakable sawbuzz that carries across open ground. Spotters are trained to catch it, fix a bearing, and shout it down the net. And a warning passed in time is what turns a defenseless launcher into a launcher whose crew has 30 seconds to move, disperse, or start shooting. The approach is routed to beat exactly that. The drone comes in along a line of scrub and trees rather than across open ground, using standing timber as an acoustic and visual baffle, and it comes in from an axis where there is no reason to be looking. Machine gun teams orient on the direction threats have come from before. Spotters get tired. Nets get thin at the seams. A screen is only as good as the attention of the least alert man in it. Then the video freezes. Not a stutter this time, a hard hold. The last frame locked on the monitor, the horizon line and a slice of field frozen in place, the telemetry still ticking underneath it. Somewhere in that half second, the operator learns nothing about whether the drone is still flying level, still climbing, still on heading, or already cartwheeling into a field. This is the moment that ends most of these flights. A tactical FPV quadcopter has no satellite navigation to fall back on and no inertial system computing its own position through the dark. The video feed is not a convenience. It is the entire sensor suite, the whole nervous system, and when it dies, the machine becomes a few $100s of plastic and lithium traveling in whatever direction it was pointed at the instant the picture stopped. The operator does not panic turn. Turning blind is how you fly into a power line. He holds the stick where it was, keeps the last known heading and waits. 1 second, 2. The picture comes back and it comes back closer. The tree line has slid past on the left, the field has opened out ahead, and in the middle distance, sitting in a rear position behind a screen that was supposed to be absolute, is the shape of a tracked vehicle far too large to be anything ordinary. An S-300V launcher does not look like the wheeled trailers most people associate with Russian air defense. It is a heavy tracked chassis, wide and long, with an erector assembly on its back, carrying missile containers that stand up like a raised gate when the system is deployed. Deployed, it is unmistakable at any distance where you can see it at all. It is also, at this moment, exactly as maneuverable as a bulldozer. There is camouflage netting. There usually is. Netting cuts the visual signature and softens the outline and does real work against a satellite pass or a high-altitude spotter drone. What it does not do is defeat a camera at 100 meters, closing at 100 kilometers an hour. Held by a human being who has been staring at this specific silhouette in training imagery for months. The net bought concealment. Concealment is not invisibility, and it expires the moment somebody is already close enough to look under it. The last leg is where every remaining layer has to work simultaneously or not at all. This is the range where a mobile fire team earns its existence, where a heavy machine gun or a twin 23mm mount has a genuine, well-documented chance of swatting a quadcopter out of the air. Because at these distances, the drone is committed, predictable, and no longer able to route around anything. It is also the range where an interceptor drone crew would already have had to be airborne. An interceptor launched when the target is 400 meters out is a spectator. Nothing comes up. no tracer arc, no inbound interceptor crossing the frame. The last 100 meters of a strike like this are usually the most crowded seconds in the flight, and here they are empty. The operator picks his aim point. On a launcher, this is not a matter of hitting it anywhere and hoping. A 1 to 3 kilogram warhead is not going to disassemble 40 tons of tracked steel by blast alone. That is not what a small charge does. What a small charge does is reach something that will do the work for it. On a deployed launcher, that something is the missile itself. A large, solid propellant motor and a warhead sitting in a container, energy already loaded, waiting for a reason. The drone bores in flat and level. The container assembly grows in the frame, fills it, and the feed cuts to static. The launcher is gone. The footage that surfaced in the first week of August 2026 shows the result, and the assessment is not ambiguous. An S-300V launcher. In occupied Luhansk region, destroyed by a frontline FPV quadcopter. Not a fixed-wing strike drone flying autonomously from far behind the line. Not a missile. A hand-flown multirotor of the same class that hunts infantry dugouts and pickup trucks, and it went through 5 layers of purpose-built protection and finished a vehicle designed to intercept ballistic missiles. According to Dmytro Putiata, the Ukrainian veteran and open-source analyst whose account is the reason anyone outside 2 units knows this strike happened, what failed here was not one gadget. The chain. His argument is that the whole layered counter-drone screen around this launcher broke down. The detection posts, the electronic warfare, the gun teams, the interceptor crews. He says a system supposedly wrapped in 5 tripwires let a hobby-class quadcopter walk straight through the middle of it. That is one named analyst's reading, not an after-action report from either general staff. But it is the reading that fits what the footage shows. Putiata's framing was that this was the first time an FPV of this specific type had accounted for an S-300V. That claim is his, and it needs one correction. An FPV had already reached an S-300V component in Crimea in May 2025, so the record is contested. What is not contested is the vehicle, the region, and the class of weapon that ended it. Now the accounting, and it does not stop at one burned chassis. An S-300V does not fight alone and cannot be replaced piecemeal from a warehouse the next morning. It operates as a battery. The surveillance radar, the sector radar that watches for ballistic tracks, the fire control radar, the command vehicle, and a set of launchers, all of them tracked, all of them scarce, all of them tied together into a single functioning organism. Take a launcher out and you have not damaged a battery. You have subtracted a fraction of every engagement it can ever fight again. The radars still see. There are simply fewer tubes to answer with. And the sector they can cover with confidence has just shrunk. Then there is the arithmetic, which is the part Russian planners will find hardest to argue with. A single interceptor missile from this family, one round, of which a full battery carries a limited number, costs several orders of magnitude more than the machine that destroyed the launcher carrying it. The strike drone in this story is a few $100s of hobby-grade motors, a flight controller, a battery, a camera, and a warhead. It was flown by one person. It was expended in minutes. The vehicle it removed is among the most expensive tracked platforms Russia has committed to this war. That is the inversion, and it is not rhetorical. Air defense has always been an economic proposition. You accept an expensive interceptor because the thing it stops is more expensive still. That equation held for 70 years. It does not hold when the cheap thing eats the expensive thing. The crew of a launcher deployed in the open in daylight, at the moment a warhead reaches the missile containers, have nowhere to go. Another ground forces air defense element removed from the Russian order of battle, and the men who brought it across a border that was not theirs to cross did not leave that field. There is a second bill coming, and it is the one that will shape the next 6 months more than the wreck itself. Every high-value Russian system now has to reckon with a threat envelope that has quietly expanded. For 3 years, the mental map was simple. Quadcopters own the first 10 kilometers. So heavy air defense sits behind that and worries about aircraft and missiles. Long-range assets were protected by distance. That map is out of date. A frontline FPV, flown by one operator with a video feed and a battery, has now reached a vehicle that Russian planners had positioned specifically on the assumption it could not be reached by that kind of weapon. The response is expensive whichever way they go. Pull the batteries further back and their coverage over the front thins. A 100-kilometer missile, fired from 140 kilometers behind the line, protects nobody. Keep them forward and commit real resources to guarding them. More electronic warfare posts, more gun trucks, more interceptor crews, more men awake at more hours doing nothing but watching a low horizon for a machine the size of a dinner plate. Every one of those is a unit not doing something else. Cheap weapons do not just destroy expensive ones. They tax them continuously everywhere forever. Remember the 8 minutes of battery the operator started with. Against that, a radar suite built to track objects falling out of the stratosphere, and 5 layers of doctrine written specifically to stop this exact attack. The battery was enough. The screens are still there, so is the doctrine. What changed in occupied Luhansk in July 2026 is that everyone now knows the depth at which they hold, and it is shallower than Russian commanders had been telling themselves. The line separating front-line risk from rear area safe moved several kilometers deeper into occupied territory that month. The defenders moved it, and they moved it with a machine that costs less than a set of tires.